Good evening. Welcome to another special edition of the Queen's Grapevine. This happened to be your host, Wallingford Lee. Tonight on the Grapevine, we want to talk a little bit about stop and frisk, the importance of it and how it's viewed by the public here in New York City and the effect that it has. Most people critique it. They don't like the behavior of the police department or how they act in the stop and frisk because it seems to apply mostly to Latinos or minorities. Meanwhile, you have a great deal of population says that it helps stop crime and it makes a big difference. Obviously, our mayor thinks it's a great weapon and he uses it effectively. And today, on a Grapevine, we're going to have the opportunity to talk to a person that has a lot of experience in law enforcement. I'm talking about Mr. Anthony Miranda, who happens to be the chairman of the Latinos Officers Association. This gentleman obviously was a great police officer and he has retired from the force. And we just feel that what better person to talk a little bit about these type of things because he has the experience, he has the background and the know-how. Also, Anthony has been a lot, helping out in the press when they come and asking questions. And we feel really privileged and honored to have the opportunity to have him on our program. Welcome to our program, Mr. Miranda.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it's good to have you because we know the great work that you have done. But for those who might not be familiar with who you are, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Well, I'm a retired sergeant with over 20 years in the New York City Police Department. I was one of the founders of the National Latino Officers Association. We went national. We now represent city, state, and federal law enforcement officers throughout the United States, civilians as well. And our activities have to do with advocacy and defending the rights of not only our community, but the minority officers as well.
And that's a very good thing. That gives you a little bit of flavor of the background of this gentleman and some of the things that he's involved into and what better person to talk about the things that we'll talk about a little bit here. Tell me something, Anthony. What is exactly stop and frisk?
Well, stop and frisk was a right given to law enforcement officers. I believe it was developed through the court system, a number of court cases, that establishes the ability for police officers to stop an individual, stop them, question them, but they had to have suspicion that the person was engaged in or about to engage in some type of illegal activity. And that's the legal format by which they should be doing it. Unfortunately, it's no longer the format used currently by the New York City Police Department.
It's ironic that you mentioned that because our research tells us that this thing actually started in 1968. And it gives to a police officer, as you mentioned, if he suspects of he or she, he can stop them and frisk them. But it seems to me that it's, based on our research, it seems to be more applied to Latinos and minorities. Why is that?
Well, again, we should be clear about what it's saying. It says it gives you the right to stop, ask questions. And then, based on the questions and the manner of stopping the individual, there has to be more behavior or other factors which leads you to the point of maybe believing that you might be endangered somehow and leads you to the status of being able to frisk somebody and go into their pockets and search them. But that's a danger factor. It's not an absolute saying that every time I stop somebody I have the right to search them. So they don't go hand in hand. There is a step-by-step process which should be followed, which generally are not.
Yeah, when we said it should be followed and come to my next question, why is it that it's not been followed properly?
Again, I think traditional law enforcement, you had to have good law enforcement officers doing investigations. What we have now, the current system is they made it part of a quota system where officers are required to conduct so many stop, question, and frisk per month. So the moment they made it a quantitative issue and crunching numbers, that began the process of making it illegal. And so that's the struggle that we have now. By every right, the judge's decision was absolutely on point because the mayor and the police commissioner both said that they were stopping people because of the color of their skin. And those admissions that they made, believe it or not, I believe are the factors which caused the judge to take the serious action that they did here in New York.
And I happen to agree with you. I think the judge took that position because of the racist behavior, because obviously it falls into what we call profiling. A lot of people don't understand the dangers of profiling. And case in point, like a lot of people talk about what happened to Trayvon, it was a tragedy. Yes, it might have been, but it started by being profiled, and that's the danger. How dangerous is profiling in your estimation?
Again, it's absolutely illegal. We shouldn't judge, like he says, in any discrimination statute says you don't judge an entire community by the actions of a few. If criminals are criminals, but it doesn't mean that all the criminals happen to have people of color. The only, and especially in this mayoral race, which is so important to us, there's only been one candidate that said that he's going to eliminate stop, question, and frisk. And for us as law enforcement officers, we don't want it as part of a quota system, and the community doesn't want it because they're the ones suffering under the oppression of it. Again, and John Lew's the only guy who said, guess what, we're going to do away with this thing.
Period.
And everybody else has been trying to fix it and modify it, and we're, you know what happens?
They're tweaking it.
They're trying to tweak it, but they've abused the process so much that it required the actions by a federal judge because they abused the process so much. So now there has to be a reaction, you know? And we needed the federal intervention. We needed to have people who are going to be strong on this issue lead us now in the future, because they've taken so many years of abuse that you can't fix something that they've abused for so long.
But it's interesting that you mentioned something like that. We know for a fact that the Honorable Bloomberg is on its way out. But he seems to be defending this stop and frisk in a valiant way and in a very aggressive way. Is it effective? Does it stop crime? Does it prevent crime in your estimation?
No, again, they like to sell it as a matter of telling our community that they'll be in danger if we don't have this factor. And that's absolutely nonsense. Good old-fashioned police work means you conduct an investigation, you have a basis for which to investigate people, stop them, question them, and then if need be, you would frisk them for safety reasons. And police work has always been done in traditional format. Knowing your community is so important. Being involved in the community, knowing who belongs and who doesn't, and having the cooperation of the people who live there. And we don't have that now. When people are afraid to talk to the cops and interact with them, when the cops don't feel they have to know the neighborhood, that they can just come in and terrorize an entire community simply because they say, you know, this person's dark-skinned, or black or Hispanic, and that's the majority of people. So again, this has been a racist policy.
Practice that has ordinary citizens squaring off with the NYPD on a daily basis. Opposition to the stop and frisk program has swelled in recent days and weeks. Several police officers themselves have blown the whistle on the program, saying that the department is forcing them to meet quotas to provoke innocent civilians. Now, up until this point, there have been a lot of allegations and little evidence of wrongdoing. Until now, 2 recordings have made their way into the spotlight, each telling a different narrative about the program. The first is an audio from an NYPD officer where his superior told him who to target. He says, quote, "I have no problem telling you this, male blacks, and I told you this at roll call, and I have no problem to tell you this, male blacks 14 to 21 in age."
Our research tells us that 90% of people that are stopped, okay? I repeat, 90% of people that are frisked and stopped are innocent. They are not arrested because there's nothing on them. They found absolutely nothing on them. I think, if my memory serves me right, in 2011, I think 684,000 people were stopped in New York City. What was the result of that in terms of whether they were guilty or not? The same type of situation, 90% of them was innocent.
I think it's higher than 90%. I think it's almost like 95% of the people were never involved in any criminal activity, never arrested, never found to be engaged in any illegal activity. It's any program, regardless of who started it, and had the type of results that we're talking about here, with less than 5% accuracy, would have been dismantled years ago. So when we look at this program for the results that it's had, then we say this has been a total failure. And the way they've manipulated these numbers, and again, it's about creating numbers, and whenever we get to a system that doesn't care about the community, it's supposed to be assisting. Again, police work is supposed to be assisting the community, not abusing the community. So when we get to the point that it's just about generating numbers, then that makes it even more illegal. And again, when you start threatening cops, and if you don't give us 25 stop, question, and frisk a month, then we're going to change the hours you work, we're going to make sure you don't get any overtime, or we're going to change the precincts that you work in to make it further away from your homes. These are again, tactics that the union should be fighting, absolutely. And we as a National Latino officers have always said, the illegal quota system, they may stop and frisk part of an illegal quota system that should have been eliminated years ago. And all of our elected officials, city council included, we've testified at congressional hearings and city council hearings, and we say it's mathematically impossible that in every precinct, no matter what the hours are, they would work out citywide that every precinct would have the same numbers of stop, question, and frisk, the same numbers of summons given out in the community. And see, that's mathematically impossible. So that says that there's an illegal quota system, easily verifiable, but none of our elected officials have taken the long stance of saying to do something about it or challenging the police department. That's why it says, you know, John Lewis is the only guy who says he's going to take on the fight. There's been no elected official. I mean, we've testified in city council hearings where we laid out the numbers for them and said, here's what they're doing right now. You can verify this. They had the authority, subpoena power to subpoena the police department. They had the authority to do investigations. They made a conscientious choice not to.
Why?
Whether they say they're intimidated by the police department, or they say they don't want to make an enemy of the police department. Nobody wants to make an enemy of the police department. But when you have oversight authority, they need to exercise that oversight. When they have the authority to stop illegal activities, regardless of what the agency, but especially the police department, with all the authority it has, when you see that the police department starts abusing the community, then they should have stepped up many years ago and put a stop to this.
I'm extremely surprised at the behavior also of the union. I would think that the union would step into the situation, because it seems to me that there's an issue with quotas and with numbers, and the police officers are forced to take this type of behavior because it comes from above.
Well, most of the unions have taken the position that they will not get involved in based on a racial basis, discrimination in the community. They won't fight that issue for our community. They'll fight on behalf of the members. So they've taken a different position, that the quota system or the mandates violate their contractual obligations. So they've taken it on as a bargaining tool, and they fought it on that issue, but they have refused to say that this has been a racially biased program. They have refused to take the position that it is discriminatory and has a negative impact on our community. Listen, for law enforcement officers, the right to stop, question, and frisk somebody under the proper definition of the law, it is a great tool when used properly, and the police officer has the discretion. But when you start telling cops that it's mandatory to do these things, thus becomes the avenue toward illegality and the abuses that have gone on. And in all of our communities, all of our kids know about it. And parents now tell their kids to be careful, not necessarily the crime, but also the interaction of police officers. And I think that's a dangerous place that we've reached right now.
Well, one of the things that has me totally surprised is the behavior of the politicians. I would like to think that our elected officials have a responsibility to our community. Our elected officials have responsibilities to the community in more ways than not. Why they have not stepped in to make a difference in these such of sensitive issues? What's the reason behind something like that?
Again, a lot of it came, I believe, from fear, and the fact that the leadership of the city council, Christine Quinn and the speaker before her, they've never wanted to exercise the subpoena power against the police department. So these are people who had the authority. Now, you had some changes in the city council recently, and
right.
We obviously are supporting those changes. They don't go far enough, but they're as far as the city council can go, so we are supporting that effort. But it's too late, a little bit too short and too late. It's because of an election year that bill got passed. It should have gotten passed before these elections even came into because we have Christine Quinn now running for office, and they're now bargaining with various city council people to sign on to a bill. We're challenged by that whole process. But however it came about, and we believe it shouldn't have come about the way it has, by political pressure because of elections. They should have done this in the first term in office, when they first got elected 4 years ago to the city council. They should have adopted this bill, let it pass into law, and not bamboozle out the public and the citizens to believe that they're doing it for us. This is not right now being done for us. This is being done because of politics right now.
Would you consider Quinn, who's running right now for office, to be a disciple of Bloomberg? Won't she continue with the same type of behavior that Bloomberg has set forth? Don't you think so?
Absolutely. I don't think there'll be any deviation between Christine Quinn and Bloomberg. And I think us as a community, communities of color, and people in general just had enough. There shouldn't have been a third term. There should have been a third term for Bloomberg, and now we've reached that point. You say enough is enough. We don't want the same old thing. We need change. And again, the only guy we're supporting John Liu for mayor, and the reason we are because he's the only guy who said he's willing to take on the fight for us. He's the only guy who's been at the forefront of change. He's the only guy who said he's going to eliminate these illegal practices, and he's willing to take the fight on. The rest of our elected candidates running for office, none of them have said they want to take on the fight. They want to tweak the system. They want to modify the system, but they don't want to. It takes radical action right now because the system has been so abusive that we can't compromise. And so we need to make sure that the next leadership coming in, the mayor, has to be somebody who has a radical approach.
And going to step forward.
And going to step forward and take the action that's necessary.
When we get back in the Queen's Grapevine, we're going to continue talking about stop and frisk and whether it helps the crime situation in New York City. We want to also go forward talking about the possibility whether Bill de Blasio could win or Mr. Liu could win. And what does that mean for the police department? What does that mean for the New York community? We'll be right back in the Queen's Grapevine as we continue forging ahead. We'll be right back. And we're back here in the Queen's Grapevine talking about stop and frisk, whether it helps reduce crime, whether it upset a certain part of the communities, and who are some of these communities that are upset about stop and frisk. And more importantly, who are some of the communities that think it's a great deal, that it helps stop crime. We're also talking about the position of the police officer, who has to carry out his job on a daily basis, who has a responsibility to report back to the precinct and to superiors. And we're talking a little bit with some of the quarter system that some of the guys in the police department are encounters when they come back and report back. And more importantly, let's forget about everything, the community and why only certain people are affected by the stop and frisk situation. And more importantly, how and why some people are stopped. What is the agenda, if there's such a thing as an agenda, and where, in what type of neighborhood most of this has occurred. And of course, we have, as Mr. Miranda just mentioned, we're going through what we would call a run for mayor. So next year we're going to have new mayors. So we need to know also the people that are running for mayor, where do they stand in this? We're talking about Mr. Weiner, we're talking about Mr. Liu, Mr. de Blasio also, and Bill Thompson. We need to kind of feel where they're going with these issues and where they're standing stop and frisk. Because again, we find in the research that we did, the most person affected by it, unfortunately, are people who are minorities. And we want to know why. We have a right as citizens, okay, of this town to know why the police department behaving that way, why the mayor is so strong in this stop and frisk. And we have our special guest with us today, Anthony Miranda, who has been kind enough to give us the opportunity to spend some time talking to him in terms of his point of view, the effect that stop and frisk has in New York City and the behavior pattern that's taking place. Is stop and frisk also used in all major cities in the United States?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a court-granted right that is used by all law enforcement agencies across the United States right now. And they don't seem to have necessarily the same problem that we have here in New York. Or maybe they haven't gotten documented the way New York has gotten documented this time. So the struggle is still ahead of us. We know that most programs that are initiated by the New York City Police Department are generally copied across the United States. So if they copied what New York City was doing, then the same abuses, inherent abuses in the process, are the same things that are happening across the streets in different states. And I'm sure there'll be litigation that will follow this landmark case in New York that will be followed up in other states as well.
Well, it seems to us the judge that is trying to put a stop to this, she's extremely serious, and she doesn't seem to be afraid of the mayor, and she have taken the bull by the horn. My understanding is that the mayor is going to stand up to this. Are there possibilities that he'll stand up to this and get it knocked down?
Listen, anytime, the mayor has always taken the stance, unfortunately, to spend enough of the city's money, because it's not his money in challenging these cases, and they'll take it to the highest court possible to try to overturn the decision. But again, I think the thing that holds the case more solid for this particular federal judge is the fact that the mayor and the police commissioner both have publicly stated the reason they are stopping people of color is because people of color are the ones who commit more crimes. That's what they said. And that's as illegal. That's the most basic definition of racial profiling, which is illegal by any standard. So I think that they in themselves were the instrument by which they left the judge no options to saying she ruled against the city in this process. And they at no time tried to say that they were willing to fix it. They at no time said that they saw anything wrong with it. So here you had the architects of the process clearly indicating the racial bias of it. And then all citizens should understand that those statements, he can easily have turned around and said, we need to stop all white people or all people who are left-handed. This is called racial discrimination, racial profiling, and again, the basic definition, they gave it to us, the mayor and the police commissioner, out of their own mouths. And their unwillingness to even see that there was something wrong with the process that needed to be fixed. I think those are things that cried for federal intervention. And hopefully in the future, and that's why we need federal oversight, because one of the things is, why do we need federal oversight? Federal oversight is important because it doesn't depend on who the mayor is, it doesn't depend on who the police commissioner is, it depends on a legal standard, and it supersedes any administration. So I think the federal oversight was absolutely necessary.
Well, that's good to know at least that somebody's standing up to them. I'm a little surprised of Mayor Bloomberg, because he came into office with big promises and did a very good job the first 2 terms. He forced a third term on us and he won. and now on his way out, it seems to be having all kind of problem. His comments obviously is somewhat insensitive and somewhat brutal, so to speak, because it affects certain people in the community and their pictures like if they're just criminals, because if it's saying that for minorities and Latino it's okay and it apply, that's not a good thing. Let's talk about one thing. We read in the papers recently that California Police Department is using like some small micro cameras on them. Does that here in New York City too? And what is your feeling about something like that?
Yeah, I'm sure that the cameras serve two purposes. They will both serve to protect the community and protect the officers against suits, allegations that aren't true as well. So the police officers need to embrace the process that's going on right now and give it a little less resistance. And these are not something that they should be reaching for a camera in an emergency situation or where it's something that requires their firearm being the first thing that they should be reaching. These cameras are supposed to be used for everyday encounters to ensure that they document the interaction. And I think it's an effective tool when used properly.
Is it on board here in New York City also? It's being used right now?
The federal court mandate, the court has mandated that every borough have at least one precinct right now that has cameras on all the officers, and I think it's a great program. And I think when they see how effective it is, that they should make it citywide.
It sounds great to me. Has there been any type of feedback on it since it's out there being used recently?
Again, the initial reaction as any law enforcement agency is to be resistant to change. They never want anything that's going to be that documented, because it can also serve to have their officers disciplined. So nobody's really trying to embrace that process. But the reality is they need to get with the 21st century. This type of technology has been available and is available outside of New York City. So we need to start embracing that. I think it's a protective tool, protects officers' rights against allegations that are unfounded. But at the same time, it also gives them a standard. Those officers who have the tendency to not pay attention to the legality of it, now they'll be cautious and say, well, I better not do that because I have a camera on me and this is going to be recorded. They should not only do it on a police officer's clothing, they should have it in the front of the police cars when they pull vehicles over as well, because we've seen many allegations of abuse in that situation. So I don't think we've gone far enough. This is a good first step. It allows everybody the chance to grow into a new process, but then it should be citywide for all officers to have that as part of their gear, and part of the equipment to all law enforcement vehicles should have it as well.
Make no mistake about it, being a police officer in New York City is a very difficult job. New York City is a very large city, and you have people from all walks of life. You have good people, bad people, and dangerous people. And we know the job that they have. The police department is very difficult, especially approaching a car, especially approaching someone at nighttime. You don't know who it is, you don't know what to expect. Do you think there is enough training done on the officers that are out in the street today to avoid some of the problems that they encounter, where some communities feel that they're extremely racist because most of these cops, one, are not either trained properly, or two, they don't even live in the city, or three, their behavior pattern?
I think I don't think it's a matter of new training. I think they have all the rules in place and have all the training in place to have the officers do their job properly. I think it's a matter of supervision, and it's a matter of the message that's being brought down from the administration, from the police commissioner's office on down. I think we're overdue for a change. The hierarchy of the New York City Police Department has its change in space, its color, its behavior, its culture for years. I mean, we had different police commissioners, but the middle structure of the police department, in this traditionally white-held ground, there is very little color inside the middle of the police department. So I think any police commissioner coming in now will be looking to make wholesale changes and have more progressive ideas, which we need that. We need the opportunity to have growth and new ideas and kind of, again, I think bring the New York City Police Department into the future, into the 21st century, into the technology that's available. And I'm telling cops, listen, I don't think it's something they should be scared of. Many officers have been the victims of false allegations as well. Well, here you have the tools now to say that you won't be victimized in this way at all, but you can also now have a tool that gives the confidence of the people of New York City to say, I won't be abused at all, I won't be stopped because I happen to be black or Hispanic or live in a certain community. So these things that they're proposing, I think, are safeguards that are well been documented, necessary.
Well, the changes that you talk about are very important, and obviously it takes a lot of gall and strength to do them. Are we anywhere close to these type of changes?
I think the court order is something that's going to be forced. I think Bloomberg and Kelly are going to fight it while they're still in this administration. But we're looking forward to 2014, which has a new police commissioner and a new mayor who will hopefully be more progressive and more ready to embrace the changes that are necessary to protect the citizens. As well, again, the message that the police department is sending and the unions are saying that if you take away this right, that somehow crime is going to run rampant. No.
That's what they say.
And that's how they scare the public into saying, I don't want to we shouldn't stop it, we should let it go on. And I'm telling you as a citizen, the public, and I live here in the city as well, it doesn't make it more dangerous for us. What it says is that cops have to be better cops. They have to do their jobs the way they're trained to do it and stop being lazy in the police tactics that the police department is promoting. Police officers need to go back to embrace it the way they were trained initially and the heritage of law enforcement, which is working hand in hand with the community.
So when Bloomberg comes out of office, does that mean that Kelly comes out or Kelly will stay on?
Well, it's our position, and I think most of the mayoral candidates, except Kristen Quinn, have said that they will absolutely replace the current police commissioner. So we want the police commissioner gone just as well as anybody else. I think John Liu is the only one who said that he has a progressive agenda for law enforcement. He has a progressive agenda about the protection of our community and how seriously he takes it. So John Liu is the guy that says that these things, that these violations that the court has now long held to be illegal and discriminatory, he's the guy who's spoken about it without fear before anybody else. And he suffered the attacks of it. But now he has vindication because the court has also seen what he has seen, and the fight that he's willing to take on, they've helped him out with it now.
Now that the court have attacked these type of issues that John Liu is talking about, how has the community in a whole responded to that?
I think the community with the court decision is waiting for a change, and they're willing to embrace it. They're willing to embrace any effort that says that community policing comes back and that law enforcement will be a part of our community working hand in hand as it used to be in the past.
Well, that community police that you talk about used to be very great. The police had a tremendous communication with the community. They would walk, they would not be in patrol car, and it was a confidence. Is that what we're trying to create and get back?
That's absolutely, and again, the same reason, one of the main reasons why we supported John Liu is because he's the only guy who said he's willing to do that. And these other guys have not been as aggressive about saying that these changes are necessary. They're still trying to, coddle the unions and disrespect the law enforcement community, and I think that we're beyond the point of coddling. We need a new approach. We need somebody who has greater vision, and we need somebody who's willing to lead from the front and take on the challenges that face us. None of these other elected officials, city council or otherwise, have ever taken on that fight like he has. So we're looking forward to him being the next mayor with a new police commissioner that looks like our community, that comes from our community, and a wholesale change of the middle structure of the New York City Police Department that will reflect the community that they're supposed to be working with. Again, not police, but working with, and that's the difference.
Well, I can tell you one other thing, that's a huge, big job and a challenge. New York City is the capital of the world, the entire world. Everyone wants to come to New York City. The mayor seemed to feel that crime is down, that they have done a great job, and that it doesn't need to be fixed. Obviously, the judge felt different. Before we sign off, is there a message that you would like to give to our community? The fact that you're a retired police officer, you've walked the walk, and you know the city well. Is there a message that you would like to give our viewing audience before we sign off?
Listen, police officers want to work with the community, and we know that the community wants to embrace law enforcement. We don't want to have, again, my kids, children of color, Hispanic, and I don't want my kids stopped illegally in the street either. We need to have confidence in the new administration that's coming on board. So my message to you is that if you want this change and you believe in this change, as the judge has said, then there's only one candidate right now. Come September 10th, you have a chance to make that absolute change, and that would be John Liu, and that's our guy. That's the guy we're supporting for Mayor City of New York. I think he's going to bring the greatest amount of change that we're looking for.
On that note, from Mr. Miranda, on behalf of the family of Grapevine, we want to say thank you so much for being our special guest.
Thank you for having us.
Your ideas. We respect your ideas because obviously, like we studied at the beginning of the program, that you've done a great job over the years and that you work in the police department, and we commend you for that. And we thank you for being our special guest.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Thank you.
And again, this is Wallingford Lee saying goodnight for the Queen's Grapevine and saying to you, thank you so much for watching our program. And we hope that this program has been informative to you. See you next week at the same time, at the same place. Good night.